Hey everyone, and welcome to the Frontend Roundup. We are diving straight into the latest and, well, greatest in web development. We're going to cover everything from rediscovering some old school tech to brand new CSS and JavaScript features that are literally going to change how you build. So let's get right into it. It all kind of starts with this quote, this realization from developer Ahmad Alfi. It's one of those aha moments, or something you look at every single day just suddenly clicks in a totally new way. He realized a URL wasn't just an address. It was basically holding all the state. It was a way to store all the information needed to build a specific view, without any database, no cookies, nothing. And this is the link that sparked that whole thought. It's for the Prism.js syntax highlighter. So he clicks it, and boom, the download page loads up with his exact configuration already selected. All the right themes, all the languages, the plugins. Everything was perfectly reconstructed just from the information packed right there inside the URL itself. Pretty cool, right? And that right there kicks off our first big topic. We are so quick these days to reach for these huge, complex state management libraries, but what if one of the best tools for the job has been staring us in the face, right in the address bar this whole time? I mean, just think about it for a second. When you put your application state in the URL, all of these things, they just work for free. You can share a link, and the person on the other end sees exactly what you see. The back button works just like you'd expect. These aren't just nice-to-have features. This is the very foundation of how the web is supposed to work, and we're constantly rebuilding this stuff from scratch with heavy libraries. So the real trick is knowing what belongs in the URL and what doesn't. Think of this slide as your handy little guide. Anything that defines the content on the page, search filters, how it's sorted, what page you're on, that's a perfect candidate. But temporary stuff like whether a modal is open or, of course, sensitive data, keep that out of the URL. Here's a simple test you can use. If you hit the refresh button, would you expect this piece of state to still be there? If the answer is yes, it probably belongs in the URL. And maybe the best part of all is just how ridiculously simple this is to implement. I mean, look at this. You can use native browser APIs that are already there, things like URL search params and the history API, and you can manage this whole pattern with just a few lines of JavaScript. You don't need any heavy dependencies. So this isn't some crazy new invention. It's just using the tools the browser already gives us. All right, so we've talked about the address bar. Let's shift gears and talk about what's happening on the visual layer. CSS is getting some absolutely incredible new features that solve problems we've had for years, and they open up some totally new ways to be creative. We've all been there, right? You've got a text area or some kind of input field, and you just want it to nicely expand as the user types more stuff in. For years, this meant grabbing JavaScript, trying to calculate heights on the fly, and just dealing with a ton of messy edge cases. We'll say goodbye to all of that. The new field sizing content property in CSS solves this entire problem with a single line. It's a perfect example of how the web platform itself is evolving to handle these common UI patterns natively, letting us replace clunky JavaScript hacks with simple, clean CSS. Next up is something I am really excited about, the View Transitions API. This is an absolute game changer for user experience. The way it works is actually pretty clever. The browser basically takes a before and after picture, a snapshot, of your page state, and then it creates a really smooth animated fade between those two pictures. And what's so cool is how easy they've made it to implement. If you're building a single-page app, you wrap your DOM updates in the Start View Transition function. But, and this is the amazing part, for a traditional multi-page website, you can now get a default crossfade animation with one single CSS rule. It's seriously one of the easiest ways to add a huge UX boost to your site today. Okay, I love this. So the State of CSS survey came out, and it found that the new trigonometric functions, sine, cos, tan, were the most hated new feature. But I really think that's just because they sound a little intimidating. I promise, they're not as scary as they look. Let's break one down. So how would you actually use this in the real world? Well, let's say you're building a cool circular menu where each item is a wedge, like a pizza slice. As you can see in step 1, we can think of each of those slices as being made up of two little right-angled triangles. For step 2, because we know how many slices we want, we can easily figure out the angle at the very center of each triangle. Now, step 3 is where tan comes into play. It's the magic ingredient. The tangent of that angle gives us the exact ratio between the triangle's height and its width. So finally, in step 4, we use that ratio to calculate the perfect height needed to make all our slices fit together seamlessly. It's math, Yeah, but it means no more guesswork and no more magic numbers in our CSS. All right, from making things look pretty with CSS, let's jump over to JavaScript and how we handle our data. There's a new array method that, if you're a fan of modern, functional programming patterns, you are going to absolutely love. And this right here says it all. On the left, we've got the old way, where you're directly changing or mutating the original array. This can cause all sorts of headaches and unpredictable bugs down the line when some other part of your code wasn't expecting that change. But on the right, you have the new, immutable way with array.with. It doesn't touch the original at all. Instead, it gives you back a brand new, fresh copy of the array with your update. This just makes your code so much safer and way easier to reason about and debug. Okay, let's zoom out for a second. At the end of the day, all this tech is really about making things better for the people using our websites. So here are 2 incredibly simple tips that can make a massive difference for your users, both in performance and accessibility. Here's a really important question every developer and designer should be asking. Does my design rely only on color to get information across? If you took all the color out of your UI, would it still make sense? Are those red borders for errors and green for success still obvious if they're both just gray? You can check this yourself in like 30 seconds, right inside your Chrome DevTools. First, you just pop open DevTools. Then, bring up the command menu. Start typing rendering and open that tab. From there, you scroll down until you find Emulate Vision Deficiencies, and you just select achromatopsia. This will instantly show you your site in grayscale and reveal exactly where you're leaning too heavily on color. Okay, for our next tip, what if I told you that you could get a massive performance boost that takes just a single line of HTML? Seriously, just one line. It's this right here, DNS-prefetch. Think of it like this. When you add this to your HTML, you're telling the browser, hey, I'm probably going to need something from this website pretty soon, so why don't you go ahead and find out where it lives now before I even ask for it? So when your code later goes to fetch a font or an API from that domain, a whole chunk of that initial waiting time is just gone. It's one of the simplest, most effective performance tweaks you can make. All right, to wrap things up, let's do a quick lightning round of what's just over the horizon in the front-end world. These are the APIs and projects you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on. First up, the Anchor Positioning API. This is the one we have all been waiting for. It's going to solve that ancient problem of trying to reliably position things like tooltips without a bunch of JavaScript hacks. Then there's InkyPy, which is just a super fun open source project for building your own custom e-ink dashboard with web tech. And finally, check out Spoiler.js, a tiny little web component that lets you hide text with this really cool particle effect, kind of like you see in Telegram. And that brings us right back to where we started. We kicked things off by rediscovering the hidden power of a simple URL. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? With all the new frameworks and APIs coming out every day, what other powerful, foundational piece of the web are we just completely sleeping on today, waiting for its moment to become the next new thing? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.